So I just want to give you a kind of brief overview of some of the ideas and manifestations that Omsk Social Club looks at and creates through their practice. Omsk Social Club is a futuristically political, i.e. unrealistic, immersive action group. Omsk proposes contents and makings as a form of post-political entertainment in an attempt to shadow play politics until the game ruptures the surface we now know as life. In the field, this is called bleed. Omsk uses traditional methods of live action roleplay and real gameplay to induce states that could potentially be a fiction or yet an unlived reality for the players and viewers that participate. Omsk Social Club is a roaming collective. It sprawls and recoils depending on its form or output. It was established in 2016 and performs itself as a facilitator of role-playing environments inside the contemporary art world. The artist group works closely with a network of core and public players to examine everything that is maybe located within our kind of contemporary hybrid sphere. Everything is unique and unrehearsed. The game designs and installations are created to become dematerialized hybrids of modern-day culture alongside the participants' unique personal experience. In the past, Omsk has introduced landscapes and topics such as the ontology of the avatar, rave culture, survivalism, catfishing, desire and sacrifice, positive trolling, algorithmic strategies, and decentralized cryptocurrency. Omsk Social Club as a concept has always pitted itself in bleed, half reality, half fiction. The door is left open between the two. Growing up in Glasgow, Manchester, Leeds, and London, and Berlin, it was not the art schools of art in which we were enrolled, but rather the after hours, the warehouse parties, and the quarry raves. This is where we found our true education. Not that we knew it at the time, of course. These spaces of rave were undeniably the first true education that we really got, and also the first place that we felt home and inspired by a community. Looking back on this time of rave, many memories pour in. Joyriding with strangers and stolen cars to get to a location, watching people trickle up love hearts, sifting through molding bathtubs for hours, tripping out on acid, trying to warm up after 24 hours in a field, dancing to breakcore beats under the wind turbines. These images feel like yesterday, fresh but blurred. The strongest parts of those memories are the people. The glint in their eyes, the grins, the tears, the vomiting mouths, the tight-hold hugs you need when you can barely walk anymore, the crappily rolled cigarettes and the throbbing bodies of the dance floor and toilet cubicles. Everyone caught in the mimetic beats and the lo-fi hustling of their own souls. These places operated in another world with characters that could only ever be played out inside them. Rave as a life choice is a long one. It's never just a few hours, it lasts for days. Surviving it becomes just as important as living it. Eating, sleeping, and breathing become communal activities. All resources are shared, for better or worse, in order to keep in the zone. This space of human immersion became the muse of all our artworks that Omsk Social Club has ever created. Rave culture was a way of terraforming life for us, but why stop at one life when you can have a multiverse? Giving a bit of background about us as a practice, we originally started in 2016, initially in private, playing with life and its narrative in sequence test spaces. We went public in 2017 with Play Rave in Zurich. It was over 400 live identities and was set up just outside the city. To find the location, you had to follow the Limit River out of the city under a motorway bypass and into the first alpine forest clearing. It was set up as an illegal rave supported by Kashev, a local Zurich crew, and it ran for 6 hours starting at midnight. Players at random were given identities after they applied for them via an open call email. The characters had been constructed from looking at and speaking to 4 different generations of crews, promoters, DJs, producers, dancers, and cult figures in Zurich that had been putting on illegal raves in the city. The earliest of those manifestations were in the 1980s. The identities weren't constructed from facts, but instead from emotions. People were interviewed based on their lives, memories, crushes, and pains. The person interviewed remained anonymous to the player who received their capture of thought. Names were changed, but attitude, politics, and nostalgic events stayed the same. Remixed into common political phenomena, we birthed 400 people who played, danced, and roamed in alternative states, and questioned what was authentically real and what was not. It was the last part that really sent the chill down our spines. We never aimed to create seamless characters, polished, defined bodies acting out directions. We wanted to bleed with reality and the unknown. We wanted to shake people's connection to the architecture of the rational and let them do the same to us. This was our first piece of participatory role-playing, co-immersion. We knew right at the start we were not writing LARPs, live-action role-play, although we had heard of the term and attended one in 2016. Just to kind of overview in brief for some of you who may not be familiar with the term LARP. LARP is originally from the Nordic countries and is a specific type of role-playing game where the participants physically act out their characters' actions to set storyline derived from a game master. Our language seemed different to that, as it was our incentives for play. For example, we didn't want people to act, we wanted them to explore. We were more interested in chaos than in control of narrative. And that is what we were looking for. We wanted people to be able to draw on experiences that are useful to them when they return to, aka reality. We were interested in using bleed as a tool for compassion, solidarity, trauma release, empathy, and othering. This is not to say that these feelings should be immortal or absolute after they have been conceived by the user, which is why we hold workshops before each piece so people can learn the tools required to be able to practice bleed effectively and also to link people to their playing community. This type of work is, of course, not for everyone, just like any artwork, but it is open for all to experience. Some bumped to it and returned over and over again. Others blamed it and hated it for not being what they thought it should be. Every experience is unique and unrehearsed, but we do run workshops before to enable people to gain a richer experience. Saying that, no one can really experience the work in the same state as any other. This is the essence of real gameplay and underpins our motivations in working with it. However, atmosphere and commitment are the foundations of the work, just like rave life of our formative years. Raves are often pitted somewhere between nowhere, this void space, the cut-out hole from the typical societal rhythms, the gateway to the rabbit hole abyss that everyday life can't reach. This is where we wanted our artworks to be situated. In rave culture, we witnessed people dealing with themselves and life in various ways through a community space, one that was shut off from the rest of the world, with its own rhythms and daily grind. This exit space was where people went to heal and to bruise. It was the place of self-anarchy, not a prettified spar of self-improvement. This type of healing is not for all. It takes energy, strength, fear, and lust. It hurts as well as heals. The rave is not the only space you find this duality of nostrum. One could also look at the example of Japanese dance and philosophy, Buto, where dancers dance the dance of death and disease for insight. Or you can find it in the images of tarot cards or shamanic rituals. Uncertainty and ambiguity offer clarity in hot flushes in these ancient practices. These are all examples, but a few common denominations is the acts of bodying, channeling, and or self-hypnosis. These environments, be it a dance floor, a sacred space, or an alternative reality, become incubation tanks away from the rest of the world. They are activated and used by people in order to gain and expel information in acts of solidarity and aloneness. There is no time limit on these spaces, and one doesn't expect to always gain enlightenment, but the bodies keep returning to it, reflecting on it, and performing them. There is, of course, one large difference between traditional raves and our own works, and that is drug consumption. We do not advocate for traditional chemical drug use, but instead harness euphoric collectivism via dance, breathing, touch, somatic responses, and language. These skills are given during the workshops where we teach people how to release natural DMT, which is stored in the body, dynamic techniques, visualization strategies, realizing when physical closeness with strangers is safe space and when it is not. And losing one's inhibition is possible in any space the person feels safe. Real gameplay uses techniques that do this, just as drinking or drugs typically do. Saying that, this summer we created a closed work only for a core group called Utopians, which kind of goes against what I just said, but was conducted under the influence of controlled LSD. This group session was a community ritual aiming to enhance interpersonal sensitivity, collective perception, insight, and reduce defensiveness. We explored the social significance of artificially induced virtual experiences and spaces. The extraction of the experience will be shown in 2021. And so we started with a rave and have gone on to create a lot of our work in this setting, each time stretching further from its original point. To name but a few works, all of which you'll see flickering past your eyes as I speak, the documentation that you're viewing is created by players most of the time. Each player takes on the role, if it is part of their identity, to document the experiences of the others. We just completed our longest ever work in the summer, which was 58 days, 24/7 live. It was called Unrealism. The work was a multi-modal approach to exploring the idea of life online as a cosmic depression, paradise without ecology. We explored the notion that today, online reality fundamentally changes the way we live, work, and socialize. The speed, breadth, and depth of current breakthroughs in online culture are at a historical precedent, as you probably gathered, and are erupting in almost every society on this planet. We can no longer separate online and offline life. It has become a constant regurgitation of itself, an immortal Ouroboros, a living fiction of our times. However, we rarely call it fiction. The internet has become the illegitimate child of journalism, a teenager which has no authority nor guidance. This has allowed for radical voices to appear in our discourse, for better or worse. new fetishes and addictions to be formed, and a whole new universal economy to be birthed by a string of avatars and personas that inhabit this digital multiverse and bleed out into life. This web of stories will be the fuel, or was the fuel of Unrealism, and yet the work's genesis was not really coming from this devoid, dooming narrative of zombification through simulation, but more the trickster archetype, which is akin to technology's tropes on the whole, and maybe even life itself. The trickster shows how intelligence fares in unpredictable and chaotic world, and its spirit is that of a mischievous riddling, and from this point most of our work begins. The idea behind Unrealism was to create a beta world, where life online is the primary life of an individual. The piece then unpacked what it means to life. Can one survive in this terrain? And what happened to the mind when it is given an infinite number of sources and no external responsibility? Does life become one epic hallucination? And when your world, your whole world is digital, can you flow and be creative, being found with this window with 1,000 views? This work that I'm talking about was mainly taken over by a character called Eastern Agrippa. They were the main protagonist, and over 8 weeks they formed a community over Discord, lived in isolation, and wrote a book entitled Live Preliminary Document of the Internet. They are currently editing this book, and it will be out next year. Omsk Social Club often works at the intersection of art, technology, and culture. Another piece that we constructed was the Crypto Rave series, which was set up as a party structure where people mined their identities, figuratively speaking, to gain access to the rave by donating 11 hours of CPU to a Monero mining pool. Monero is a type of crypto. To break it down kind of briefly, we set up this collective mining pool with Media Group of Bitniks for desktop computers and laptops that was supported with the Monero cryptocurrency. Hence, paying for your ticket and gaining your new identity meant opening your computer and mining 11 hours of Monero. Eventually, after these hours, different things were released, such as your identity, a crypto handbook, and things that could aim to allow you to explore this crypto rave with more purpose. And eventually you got your QR code, which was the ticket that was then scanned at the door and allowed you to gain access. The crypto raves that we worked with appeared in Berlin, Athens, Basel, Barcelona, and we had producers like Amnesia Skana, Pilipuligas, Panesia Girl, Yassi Persa, Primitive Art, Crystal Mess, and Suto playing. The idea of bleed here can even be seen in the technology used to instigate the crypto rave. By participating, viewers had to mine crypto from their own computers. But most of the ideas around mining and cryptocurrency was completely foreign, yet the work became an active threshold for the person to become connected to these decentralized new technologies in their own home, which then potentially, we hope, led to the demystification and curiosity to explore these ideas further. In a sense, this is also what Eastern Agrippa was a lead-on to. Instead of living technology outside of the mesh, we went deeper in with Eastern. A lot of the works that we do try to explore or create kind of plateau moments of bringing about new ideas that are potentially not yet fundamentally constructed, to then allow for a space between both practice and theory to open up for people to be able to explore within a kind of controlled environment, but then hopefully this exploration or the results in which they find will actually then move into their everyday life. So I would like to show you an extraction of one of the pieces that we created, which is called Smile, because I feel like probably not too many people in the room have really so much of a clue about what I'm talking about in relation to how this thing actually moves when it's active. But I just have to do some kind of like messy movement in the, which you can all watch as I dither through it. maintains a historical precedent and is erupting in almost every sector, be it the arts, science, or emotional, which leads many to the argument that now, more than ever, we need it. It certainly has the potential to transform the world we live in, and couldn't that be harnessed to create environmental protection for us and the planet? 60s, small subcultural technological communities have argued that the use of technology is exactly that tool that could save the planet and our societies. Smile, a trip into synthesia, fuses mystic social practices and technological outlets together to produce a live, working component that questions the role of technology and society beyond the dogmatic space of doomsday speculation. Throughout history, a fundamental issue in all our previous technological revolutions is that we have taken for granted healthy natural systems like forests, oceans, river basins, rather than valuing these as a necessary condition to develop. So if the technology is to protect and aid this biodiversity, then perhaps it could be the keystone to preserving it once it is meshed with a more earth-based spiritual practice. Hence the mystic grassroots approach that is meshed to the narrative of smile. It traverses key themes such as neoliberalism, synthetic tools, and hermeticism.
We hope to see you on the other side. Leave the past for the present.
Having massive cracks in my stomach because they're more out of fear of what lies to come. And I don't know what that would be, but it can't get worse than probably.
At present, smile ceremonies are extremely underground, but one can find many of their practices deriving from old world models, such as crypto raves, shamanism, divination, meditation, land parties, yoga, flotation tank experiences, and so forth.
meaning.
Speaking in tongues and shaking is quite common practice throughout ceremonies. Others users try to make the affected feel as comfortable as possible as they begin to transcend. Each user places a sacred personal object on the shrine sculpturization platform at the start of the small ceremony. It is said that this connects all the people present to each other in a blissful synergy, and each item acts as a talisman for the owner. The users decided it was important to remain grounded at all times, hence they created a ceremonial dress with thin chains that could be attached to objects in a room or others that go about. The rule goes that one must be grounded to something or other in the first hours of the ceremony cycle.
White garden. The roasted root makes the hog's grease, makes a good poultice to ripen and break plague sores.
There is only one source of violence in this world, the incapacity to feed on light. But where the capacity to do so has been lost, all violence emerges.
One 0 0 0 1 1 1.
Hi guys, I'm Ezra. I'm very pleased to meet you all guys. I hope we have a great time together in the community. And I heard a lot of good things about Smile, about some nice people. Where we all like music, techno, and let's go.
The passing of time is very important during Smile Ceremony. It has become a tradition to demarcate the hours with the traditional New Year's anthem of Mount Zion. All the members of the ceremony interlink arms and sing along until the track is finished. Then they kiss each other on the cheek as they would in a traditional clock striking midnight ritual on New Year's Eve. But this time, you wish the person have a new smile. Some people say this is an ironic tradition and speak of parallel worlds.
Rest in peace, the 90s. 20 years later, still the best music generation.
I'm a Muslim. I've been American for a long time. But from the other side, the world is accents. So you know, I hope I find it in the right place. I really believe that to be a witness is really closer to this one.
We're going somewhere else at the moment.
Some say the local and tradition. Some say
Beyond politics, we have begun to escape their technologically simulated lives in order to participate in inspired ceremonies. This includes practices of inducing sensory deprivation, chemical highs, trancing, journeying, sleep deprivation, and fasting. Their claims and aims are diverse, but it is common to find them searching for states of increased intelligence, social intimacy, space migration, and life extension. The model that they use is not typically a smile, minds uses. It's not open for all. Each individual needs proof of stake before they can enter the ceremony to ensure body satisfaction for all involved. The smile as concept derives from the early 60s cosmic theorists like Timothy Lee, Robert Anton and Starbuck. Yet today, it's nuanced with peer-to-peer developments, which are taken onto the community body rather than the machine itself.
Whatever is rejected from itself, appears in the world of itself.
So ready to begin knowledge and using being fast and sort of ready to emulate hearing the moment and I've been really practicing my secret and my lines for this, but disconnect as best, yeah, I'm just ready to do
There are other things inside of the world. And it's not. So it's really not just go in to it.
My question about the individual in the group was never how much structure was necessary to make it accept his privileges, how to avoid losing one's privilege classification. To strive for a horizon is not a crime and not a tea party, even if the future is written in the bottom of the cup.
The structure has no sense of design, so only the ability to write poetry. In the workshop, we will be looking people on some guidance to which politics. What is your favorite political song? If you had a chance to eliminate three political figures of the world, which would you choose? What political group, slogan, or idea on the world today has the most to do with magic? 2 words about stories.
Spiritual. At traditional smile ceremonies, there is often 2 to 3 chairs in a room. They're known as spirit chairs, and they're only used by spirits, talpas, or energies. If one of the users sees said spirit, they can go and converse with the spirit in their head or out loud. They may offer advice or just idle conversations. When somebody asks you how you feel at a smile ceremony, you do not answer from the mind, but from the body. During most smile ceremonies, users will suddenly see memories that do not fit their living experiences. They have taken to holding hands and recounting these memories to the nearest user. It is often unsure which user has experienced the memory in a past or future life. As the hours deepen inside the smile ceremony, it is common people turn to physical gestures of expression rather than only using words to describe or reply a thought to another user. And so it seems your personal journey has led you into a smile ceremony, collected by chance or by fate. Never forget, the mind calls back to the moment of time. Enter your retreat.
Original, nein. Original, nein. No, original, nein.
So hopefully you get a little bit of an impression about how we work. And what kind of goes on inside these spaces. I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but most of the, oh, now I'm making a video recording, great. It's very tense up here, as you can imagine. Yeah, basically that. Where do I? Whatever. So, in a sense, maybe you get this kind of idea about the ways in which people react or how they go into oppositional states, and this all becomes a kind of collective narrative that's brought about by the people in the room, Without those people participating in building that narrative, the work would never be able to exist. Alan Baldour answers the question, what is the functionality of desire, with the adage to open our bodies up to the outside. This state is both a mental and physical one. You can experience it both in and out of play. Jean Baudelaire also states in Final Strategies that simulation is the ecstasy of the real. Both these ideas can be connected to our ways of working and our arguments for the need of self-hypnosis, bodying, and channeling as a form of language today. We understand all illusions to be synthetic by their very nature of being illusions. But what happens when you create a consensual collective hallucination? If more than one person believes in it, does it cease to exist as an illusion, as it is a shared thought? We cannot even begin to answer this question with any sort of rationale, naturally, because the idea of belief is irrational by its very structure. A belief is not just about deeming something real or not. It's about power, values, societal archetypes, identity politics, and economy. During our real gameplays, we acknowledge belief systems have an enormous role, but not in the way that we are trying to indoctrinate our users, but more that what is believable or not to the community and the individual. This space is constantly being negotiated by those who use it. We see this as a sort of playbow, which is a kind of hybrid form of play and labor, common in the gaming industry, but can also be seen played out in real time and space. We also create events that are not so easily accessible and require a lot of preparation to enter into them. Just learning a new identity is work enough, but when you also have to mine your ticket for 11 hours or go to a workshop for 6 with no breaks or learn a new skill or set of knowledge, we also understand the format of our works, giving up your life for 72 hours or more, which is sometimes the case, living, sleeping, breathing, eating, shitting inside this piece is not so convenient for the accelerated world of attention economy and production that we live in. Yet this is exactly why we work the way we do with real gameplay in this way. We wish to call on strategies of deterrent and subversion of the self. Over the years, we've found out that any alternative structure to the typical status quo requires ritual and ceremony to enable it, and skills and tact to augment it further. This is a very specific form of alienation that does not only lie in the framework of the physical body, but also the soul, spirit, mind of the user. We believe by communally tapping into this space, it will lead us to a toolkit for reprogramming the present in a more politically effective and viable demeanor. One question we never stray far from in real gameplay: is it possible to reappropriate the soul? And if so, what does it look like after it has been shaken from the shackles of what it was told it was intended to do by its master? In other words, can the world still work if you kill the thermostat? Donna Haraway wrote a book in 2016. It was entitled Stay with the Trouble. I guess most of you will have read it or at least heard of it. Her key concept, staying with the trouble, requires us to learn to be present. In a way, Haraway not only wrote a book of theory, but also a toolkit of, in a sense, what would it mean if fiction could be life? This is in our ways a sort of hybrid of non-fiction. Haraway means we must not fade away into the horrific pasts of apocalyptic futures, but instead be here, right now. Much like the producer of Fatboy Slim's Abethan Anthem, released in 1999, whose video coincidentally started 350 billion years before and maps the evolution of a human being in 3 minutes and 48 seconds. This evolutionary composition is set to euphoric beats of the classic late 90s rave ethos score, where lyrics were often repeated as framing beats rather than storytelling tropes. This reduction of spoken information frequently meant that the words sang became a social incantation on the dance floor, and over people's personal stereos. Interestingly, in this vein, last year, another kind of hybrid theory fiction, Norman Cook, aka Fatboy Slim, remixed this original song, right here, right now, with the climate change activist Greta Thunberg's speech, adding to this kind of strange entanglement with Haraway's construct. This simulacrum of this uprising that in a way only happens inside the bodies in the 90s also bears weight to the future for Friday's demonstrations in a very strange, eerie, and surreal way, terraforming a temporary temple of the 2 decades later. I kind of want to play this. I'm not sure whether any of you have heard this remix, but I'm kind of obsessed with it. It's really a strange piece. And we also produced some graphics to it, just in case you forgot what the 90s looked like.
I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school, on the other side of the ocean. Yet, you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams, my childhood, with your empty words. And yet, I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction. All you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight? Right here, right now is where we draw the line. Right here, right now, 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 right here, right now. You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. No matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe. How dare you pretend that this can be solved with just business as usual and some technical solutions? There will not be any solutions or plans presented in line with the too uncomfortable, and you are still not mature enough to tell it like it is. You are failing us. Young people are starting to understand your betrayal. We will not let you get away with this. Right here, right now, is where we draw the line. Right here, right now, 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 right here, right now.
So I just give you a few moments to digest this because it's really quite fantastic. Like, there's so much to unpack with, like, what is his intention? Like, is he actually taking control of this idea that basically what's happening right here, right now in 2020 came from this? Is he also epitomizing the idea of this hegemonic community that was practicing euphoria of the absence of the body, the starvation of the body that renders itself useless for capitalism, but then of course we have this hyper-extension of capitalism. Like, there's so much bizarre moments in this rendition by him that I'm not really sure where to... Ideas of the surreality of this, because in his original song he actually only had the lyrics right here, right now, and waking up to find your love's not real. And in a way this kind of nods to the state in which things have become from its generation. Now, anybody who's ever gone to a rave, dropped D, fallen in love over sweating, wide-eyed, kinetic limbs can concur with these lyrics as the dawn of reality hits home. However, what is interesting in those lyrics, falling in love on the dance floor in real time during these fateful moments of connection, and the song literally destabilizes reality. It becomes both the oracle warning, waking up in the next morning, you will find out that the love that you found was not real, and the enchantress of us to fall in love, catalyzing the moments of realization in this pure chaos. And so, as a kind of thought experiment, we proffer that lust is staying with pure chaos. This term lust, it's indeterminable of genders and genres. It's also plural and collective. It is not determined exclusivity, and opposites must attract for it to be a seductive political action. This lust requires us to believe there is a point, to not strive for something other than what is in front of us right here, right now. To practice this lust, we must let fate be our matchmaker and reject the oracle of knowing retorts that every love story is a ghost story. If we believe there is a point to this coupling, we will keep going. And if we do not, we will seek other divine bodies that we may never reach. We believe social becoming is possibly, technically, but politically we're not there yet. In order to get there, we must find and engage with methods of sustainable leisure time that blends synthetic life with tangible realities. Because after all, the realities that we create will demarcate the synthetic life and the choices we have to make, not only as individuals, but also as an organic mass. And I think that this clip really shows that. In Omsk Social Club, we accept reality as a craft. And then can we only really truly see the uncanniness of the political incubus that rides on our chests each day By zooming in and out of the self, we see the self as purely a build-up of memory and legitimacy, which is only created through the connection to other things. By using these pragmatic tools, we could hack into life and envisage a radically new, diverse, decentralized, autonomous, and inclusive social software. We must always remember that or is fear made divine, and we must engage with the reality as a system, not a system that is out of control, but one that is us, and that is made by us, and we are it. Yeah, and that was basically me trying to explain how we terraform life. Thank you for listening. Is there any questions? Or was that all really crystal clear?
I don't know if you can hear me with my mask on.
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the lecture, really interesting, and the film that you showed, I thought it was particularly well made. And I think my question is derived from one of the scenes where people go into the room and they cover one of their current senses. And I was just wondering if, from your point of view, if wearing masks, if you think if that can alter our reality as well, if there is any kind of reflection of what's happening currently at the moment.
So basically, that scene was the first scene in which the ceremony that this group created together, where they would lose a sense. And of course now we are masked. Well, I'm not masked, you're all masked. But I think that, how do I say this? For example, all those people that went in there, they chose to lose a sense because they trusted the collective of people that they were going to be in a room with. And so some of them, they lost their sight in a room that they'd never been to for 1 hour, the first hour that they're in the room. But I think that what we do now in this space of being masked, it's not that we feel safe already. So I think that we can't feel this kind of elation of losing something or bettering something or creating an alternate, because most of our actions in contemporary society are purely about survival. And when you're trying to survive, it's very difficult to feel safe at the same time. And so I think that the wearing of the mask, of course, is, well, as a lot of scientists say, it's really the only defense thing that we have right now. But also we see the mask becomes weaponized too. It doesn't just stand for keeping you or the people in your room safe. That mask stands for an economic structure, it stands for a political structure, it stands for oppositional political power movements, it stands for closing borders, it stands for people being closed off in the islands of Greece without the ability to move. It's, you know, there's so much built up in this one item that really has kind of come to us in a dirty way, actually. I mean, it was not clear if we all really became collective in this belief that we wanted to make this pandemic as small as possible, as quickly as possible. We would have had to have a global, I guess, agreement. I'm not sure if this is answering the question at all. And I think that's also something that's really important and something that we often explore. Like, at times things can be uncomfortable, but you can also, breaking something allows for movement some of the time. But if it's being broken for you without your consent and without you really knowing, and you're being pushed multiple fictions around it, I think then we just get confused. And I feel like maybe this mask is somehow connected to confusion rather than solidarity. Do you want to respond?
There was just interesting to hear you elaborate on what's happening, and I guess since it's such a new situation, it's good to hear different viewpoints, and yeah, it was enriching. Thanks.
Is there any other questions? Were you just waving at me, or? Now I'm putting you on the spot. I thought you were waving. You, yes.
I was waving this way.
Oh, someone else. Okay.
I'm waving you too, it's okay.
Oh, this was nice.
Yeah,
So really that kind of takes a lot of ego away from the experience of collaborating in the first place. Because we were very surprised the first times when our first works that opened called Dead Air, which was a 72-hour sleep deprivation game, where people would actually go and stay up for 72 hours. We were so surprised that anybody would want to do that. And not only did just one city do it, but we did it in 3 cities. And it kind of built from there and just kind of became more a way of working together, was also a way of experimenting and exploring rather than trying to come with a finished idea. And I think that takes a lot of difficulty away from collaboration. I mean, I still don't really know what Omsk is. I mean, of course, I'm trying to rationally explain it to you, but really the whole process is completely irrational. The idea of living a character that is with a group of people in a fictional world, it's irrational. It's something emotional.
But anything that's already in a video is an emotional process.
Yes, for sure. And I mean, the person who made, I didn't make the video. The person who made the video, it was a very, I mean, I also laughed when I watched the video because certain characters come into my mind. And I mean, I guess that's also the reality of any art practice, is this emotional presence that translates into a physical visual. And I mean, also, as you can see, there is so many people who build this thing. Even when you saw in the video, like, yeah, there's some sets of practices that are brought about at the genesis of the work, but then in the workshops we build more together from all, so that's also building with people who come from public space. And then when it's happening, this also builds. So, I mean, this is also for us the real principle that we do not own Omsk. It is really only in situ, in a way. And I mean, a lot of the styles and aesthetics that we have come from our own social space, of course, and have come from our own childhoods, and have come from our own spaces of growing up and things like this. Yeah. Did that help? It was very vague, what I just said. You want to respond? I hate being the last person to answer the question, in case you have something more to add.
No, I don't.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, so how do you then define yourself as an artist group, or how do you actually, is it a kind of open source project, as I understand, that shifts to different, like go through different stages, or how does it work?
we call ourselves an artist group. And we very much see ourselves as this, I think, because we practice our work inside the contemporary art sphere. And this is also where we do not necessarily see ourselves as larp art, which has its own culture. It has a huge culture, actually. And we see each project as unique to the set of people that produced it. So that can be sometimes 4 people, that can be sometimes 20 people. It depends on the size of the project. It depends also what skills are needed enabling the project. So for example, if we need something programming, it's all done in-house, and then of course that person is on board for that creation of that world. So it kind of mutates, really. And it's basically on a need to create basis. That's how it works.